Cravings in the alcohol world refers to the overwhelming need for a drink. And like anything else in alcoholism, cravings are progressive. During the early stages, it's more related to the benefits of drinking. You crave a drink because you like the way that it makes you feel, either adding on some kind of positive feeling or taking away a bad one. In those middle to late stages, cravings start becoming a need rather than a want as your body becomes more physically dependent on alcohol. And then in the later deteriorative stage, you're drinking specifically to relieve the physiological and psychological distress of withdrawal. That's why you're drinking. Your life has gotten very, very small at this point. You're not out there trying to party. You're not using it as a social lubricant to help you, dance with girls or whatever it was doing for you in the beginning. Those years are long gone. The cravings have now evolved into an overpowering obsession. That's the late stage. The person with late stage alcoholism craves alcohol really because it's the most effective remedy for the pain that you feel after stopping. Early stage alcoholism, you can usually control the cravings for alcohol, but since there are so few penalties or consequences and so many seeming benefits, most people don't even really try to stop at that point. But as the tolerance increases and the physical dependence sets in, the person with alcohol use disorder gradually loses psychological control of that physiological need for alcohol. So at this point, willpower and self-restraint and just the ability to say no longer has any power over that craving. What drives casual drinkers crazy, is that like they'll look at this person and say, "Why can't I can have a few? Why can't they?" Classically, the most judgmental and vocal people towards people in late stage alcoholism are people in earlier stages of alcoholism. They sort of drink in a similar way, they're obsessed with it in a similar way, but their physiologies haven't changed enough yet to have lost full control. So they just kind of cast that judgment out there, saying like, he's the real alcoholic. If anybody has the problem, it's that guy, not me. Because at this point, for the late stager, the physiological need for alcohol really overshadows anything else, and that physical need is caused by the acute withdrawal syndrome, okay, as opposed to the post-acute like I talked about in the last video. When that blood alcohol level starts to drop, it becomes very, very uncomfortable, distressing, and in an attempt to forestall those symptoms, the person keeps drinking. Okay, so now we're getting into those later stages, and that's what I'm talking about more in this video. So as the person loses control over the cravings in his drinking, he's no longer able to restrict it to socially acceptable times and places like they were probably able to do before. So you're more or less always drinking more than you intended to, and the drinking continues despite these extremely punishing consequences. That's the distinguishing factor that defines the physical addiction. The inability to stop despite these firm resolutions to do it. Drinking at weird times, weird places, keeping bottles snuck all around the house or at work, because when that craving comes on, it's just going to be overwhelming. These are all confirmations that a physical addiction to alcohol has developed. And in terms of physical withdrawal, the opiates get a lot of the attention, mostly because hardly anybody who becomes addicted to opiates doesn't go on to become physically addicted to them. It's basically assumed if you hear somebody is an opiate addicted person that they're physically addicted. Alcohol, on the other hand, the majority of alcohol addicted people don't become severely physically addicted. But the ones who do, it's just one of the most brutal and nasty and dangerous drugs to kick. Part of the reason that you're losing control over your drinking is because that tolerance is decreasing as the withdrawal symptoms are increasing. Okay, so the person's tolerance that was was really characteristically high in those early stages, it's now actually starts to decrease. So that same person who could once drink everybody under the table and you could still rely on this person to drive you home, this person is now in serious trouble. That's why we say progressive. Okay, progressive meaning that it gets worse over time. So those same cells, they used to get a nice little boost from alcohol and were kind of strong enough all those years ago to sort of bail you out. Those cells are now damaged. Okay, like they can no longer tolerate alcohol the same way that they could. So, again, while tolerance is decreasing, withdrawal symptoms are increasing in severity, and now you're in that dangerous position of needing to drink, okay, where it turns from a want to a need. Because physically you can't handle that high level of alcohol needed to relieve the symptoms, but if you stop, you're going to suffer. This is how people lose the ability to just to judge accurately how much alcohol they can handle. And as a result, these late stagers will typically unintentionally drink more than they wanted to. And a loss of control doesn't happen all of a sudden. This is a very slow, gradual process. Sometimes you even see it in the earlier stages of alcoholism. But since the effects of over drinking are so painful, the person in the early to mid stages, they really make every attempt possible to avoid that and kind of drink within their tolerance level. At this point, they're usually able to exert pretty good control over their drinking and, for the most part, avoid most of the severe consequences. But as it progresses, the episodes of uncontrolled drinking just become more and more frequent and more and more severe. For the middle or late stages, you might start drinking in the morning, just trying to relieve a tremor in your hand or an unsettled stomach or headache or something. And then once somebody figures out that morning drink, like 1 or 2 drinks in the morning, kind of makes all that stuff go away, now you're in really big trouble. Because now the blood alcohol level is going to start dropping earlier in the day, the acetaldehyde level builds up, and then you start to feel jittery again. You need to take another drink just to forestall those symptoms. And now you're just in a really, really vicious cycle, and then by the time you're at that point, it's just unbelievably hard to break. This is when you find yourself taking like little drinks during the day, just kind of sipping, like little sips. You're not trying to get drunk. You're just trying to make that feeling go away. This cycle that I'm describing, this is what the opiate addicted people go through. So anybody who's addicted to opiates can understand exactly what I'm describing here to at least one degree or another. In terms of that physical withdrawal, most people suffering from alcoholism, they might have other kinds of consequences, but in most cases, it does not get to this point. But if it does, you're in a special kind of hell, and this cycle of drinking just to relieve the withdrawal symptoms, that can sometimes go on for long periods of time. I mean, if your liver is holding on and your pancreas is holding on, and you don't accidentally, wrap your car around a tree or kill somebody in a bar fight or something, otherwise healthier alcohol addicted people can sometimes go on these days or weeks long benders and still somehow balance the effects of drinking with those increasing penalties of withdrawal. These are the people that just love telling everybody later on, like, I was a functioning alcoholic. I'm sure you've heard people, they love to tell everybody, I was a functioning alcoholic. What they're saying is that the benefits of drinking were still slightly outweighing the penalties of withdrawal. Okay, that's what they mean by, I was a functioning alcoholic. But take a severely malnourished person where their tolerance for alcohol has decreased, okay, or someone with, liver disease or gastritis or something. That person might only be able to tolerate this extreme drinking for hours or maybe a day or two max. Soon enough, more alcohol is needed to compete with that rate at which alcohol is being eliminated. And at this point, it's just a race against time, and unfortunately, time is always going to win that race. At some point, alcohol is just not able to neutralize that increasing anguish. I think anguish is the right word for the physical pain and nausea and tremors and all that stuff that starts happening. And obviously at this point, it's clearly this person has lost all control for their cravings for alcohol. You're dealing with a very, very sick person, a person whose brain, can't be relied on right now to snap themselves out of it. And this person at this point needs a lot of help.